some boots.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ned Branch. I am the chair of the Santa Paula Chamber of Commerce, and we would like to welcome you to this evening's community forum on policing. Everyone in town that either lives here or works here has a stake in this community, and one of the most important aspects of this community is its police force. So to that end, the Chamber is very happy to be able to bring this discussion to you this evening. For those of you who wish to hear the Spanish translation simultaneously, you can catch that on a phone at 805-322-1542 and enter the passcode 1234 for simultaneous translation. And with that, I'd like to introduce the Mayor of Santa Paula, Rick Ariza.
Thank you, Ned. Welcome, everyone. As Ned said, I'm Rick Ariza, Mayor of Santa Paula, a lifelong Santa Paula person, and I want to welcome everyone and thank the Chamber for hosting this dialogue on police and the Police and Canine Foundation for being a sponsor of this event. As most of you know, Santa Paula has their own police department and has for many, many years. With the department, we're extremely pleased to participate in this forum, and hopefully you'll learn a little bit about the essential work that our department does. On an everyday basis, we have a diverse group of individuals, both men and women, serving within the department, and they are largely a big participant within the city. Now, Santa Paula has many challenges, and our law enforcement is always in the mix, whether it's mental health, drug addiction, homelessness, or transient issues. They are part of the police work that we do in Santa Paula, along with the everyday criminal activity that most of you feel and most people believe a police department is part of. But there's very important other aspects of policing, and hopefully you'll learn a little bit about that tonight. As I said, the department is one of the few departments in Ventura County not covered by the sheriff, and we're extremely happy that they are individually and part of the city of Santa Paula. Tonight's goal is to inform the community of the status of our department, as well as to address some of the concerns that the community may have. So hopefully we're going to get along today. I'm going to introduce our panelists, but before I do, I want to give a little update on our new police chief and the process. As most of you know, the process is well underway. We've eliminated, I believe there's multiple candidates, and we're down to the final three. The final three will go before a community panel tomorrow, and then a group of the police department. From there, within the next few weeks, the finalists will meet with city council and eventually with the city manager and the management team within the city of Santa Paula. After all that process, we will announce our future police chief. So with that, let me introduce our panelists today. And I'm going to start with our city manager on the left, our city manager, Dan Singer. Dan has been a public servant in local government for over 27 years. He's a graduate of Maxwell School of Citizenship at Syracuse University, and he started his career as assistant to the city manager in the city of Ojai. He moved up the ranks, became the city manager in Ojai, and eventually moved on to the city of Galena for 9 years at the city of Goleta. From there, he moved on to the city of Poway, where he served for 2.5 years. His commitment to professionalism has taken him to many steps. He's with the International City Managers Association, and he's an advocate for the board member of the League of Women in Government. In addition, Dan currently serves as a Cal ICMA Ethics Committee and written numerous articles at pushing organizations to take risks, think innovatively, and to nurture their talents. Our second panelist, Scott Varner, Commander. He's been with the City of Santa Paula Police Department since May of 2004. Prior to that, he was with San Fernando Police Department for 2.5 years and Ventura County Probation Agency for 1 year. He started his career as a patrol officer, member of the SWAT team, field training officer, and was a drug recognition expert. In 2008, Commander Varner promoted to the rank of senior police officer, where he was assigned watch commander. In 2013, he was promoted to the rank of sergeant. In November of 2017, he was promoted to his current rank and is responsible for overseeing the patrol division. He was temporarily promoted to interim assistant police chief, where he saw day-to-day operations of the entire department, and currently sits as our commander. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from California Coastal University and currently obtained his master's degree in organizational leadership. Our third panelist is our current interim police chief, Ishmael Cordero. Ishmael Cordero attended local schools in Santa Paula. He graduated in 1978 from Santa Paula High School. He then went into the Marine Corps and was hired by the Santa Paula Police Department as a reserve officer in February of 1983. In 1987, he was hired as a full-time officer, and only 3 years later was promoted to a police agent. He has been Police Officer of the Year on 2 separate occasions. He's honored with the Medal of Valor by the Police Officers Association of Ventura County. In April of 2012, he was acting police chief, and he served that position until we hired a police chief in a permanent position. He was promoted in 2013 to lieutenant under Chief McLean, and in November of 2017, he's promoted to assistant chief during the reorganization of the department. He was the right-hand man to the chief at that time, and in June of 2019, he retired after 36 years of serving the community. In March of 2020, he was offered the position of interim chief, so he's now interim chief in his retired position at this point. He's married to a lifelong Santa Paulan. He has 4 children, all raised in Santa Paula, and he was vastly involved with youth sports, Police Officers Association, and is instrumental in the cruise nights of Friday night that is no longer in existence due to COVID, but hopefully we'll start that up again. And our last panelist, Mark Stadler, he is a Crisis Intervention Team Program Administrator. He's been in law enforcement since 1987. He retired as a commander from the Ventura Police Department in 2015. Is currently the Crisis Intervention Team Program Administrator employed by the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. He graduated with the Cal Post Supervisory Leadership Institute and Command College. Has a BS degree in criminology, MS degree in business management from the University of Laverne. He's been an adjunct facility for the university since 2007. That concludes our panelists for the day. I'll turn it right back over. Thank you.
And I would like to introduce our 2 moderators for the evening. On my far right is Jose Luis Melgar. Jose Luis owns the successful Melgar Photo Studio and Palacio Event Center. A resident of Santa Paula for over 24 years, he is active in the community and is a member of Business Network International and Latino Town Hall. To my immediate right is someone who probably needs no introduction to anyone in Santa Paula, and that's Ms. Peggy Kelly. Peggy has owned the mighty Santa Paula Times since February of 2018, but she had worked as a reporter for the community newspaper since 1989. A native of California, Peggy did not enter the field of journalism full-time, a lifelong goal, until she was in her 30s, which was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, early 30s.
She has won more than a dozen press club awards for stories concerning issues that impact Santa Paula, ranging from investigative journalism, features, and commentary to arts and entertainment. Peggy believes a community without a newspaper is not a community.
Chief Cordero, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Santa Paula. We are glad to be here today to inform you of Santa Paula Police Department, how we operate, and our organization. It consists of our training budget, use of force questions, or use of force issues, crime statistics, our organizational chart, and the demographics of the department. I'll start off first by talking about the demographics of the ethnicities of the department. Currently, on the non-sworn section, we have 64% Hispanic and 36% white, which is 9 Hispanic and 5 whites. In the reserve ranks, reserve police officers, we have 1 Hispanic and 9 white, which is 1% Hispanic and 10% white. In the sworn ethnicity of police officers full-time, we have 18 white officers, which is 59%. We have 1 black officer, which is 3%. And Hispanics, we have 13 officers, which is 38%. Now, currently, the EEOC defines white of not Hispanic origin, but all persons having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. And we do have people from these areas. The years of service of the Santa Paula Police personnel vary greatly. Starting with the non-sworn personnel, the years of service, 36% is 5 years or less. 36% is also 15 and more years, and 28% is 6 to 10 years. In the reserve officer ranks, we have 50% of 11 through 15 years of service. We have 30% of 5 years or less, and 10% of 15 or more years in service. For the sworn officers, the years of service, it consists of 38% of 5 years or less, 31% of 15 or more years, 25% of 6 to 10 years, and 6% of 11 through 15 years. Currently, our department is comprised of non-sworn 14 people, 10 reserves, 32 sworn. Combined, the sworn officers have over 302 years of combined experience working for the city of Santa Paula, and almost 60 years working for the department. The department's demographics and education consist of non-sworn personnel, high school diplomas, 36%, associate's degrees, 36%, bachelor's degrees, 14%, master's degrees, 7%, and doctorate degrees, 7%. In the reserve ranks, it consists of 43% with associate's degree, 14% with master's degree, 14% with high school diplomas, and 29%, with bachelor's degrees. In the sworn ranks, we have 50% with high school diplomas, we have 31% with bachelor's degrees, and 19% with associate degrees. Our police organizational chart consists of 2 divisions, starting 2 divisions in the chief's office, consisting of the chief of police office. Underneath him is the patrol commander and the support services commander. Each commander is in charge of their divisions. The patrol commander is in charge of all uniformed personnel. The support services commander is in charge of non-uniformed personnel. The patrol consists of all uniformed personnel, the traffic safety, the K-9 units, jail operations, the jail response, special response team, the bicycle patrol, police cadets, school resource officers, whom we have 2 currently assigned, 1 to Isbell School, Middle School, and 1 to the Santa Paula High School. And also, this is where our Department of Emergency Preparedness is assigned to, and also the Reserve Officer Unit. The patrol commander is also in charge of the communications, which is our dispatch center. We also have an administrative sergeant who assists both commanders with different projects. He is in charge of the professional standards unit. In addition to that, he's in charge of training, firearms training, perishable skills, and continuing professional training. The Support Services Commander is not only in charge of the administrative sergeant, but the other areas I just named, as well as the community services, which include graffiti abatement, which we have one person working every day from early dawn to late afternoon, eradicating all graffiti within the city of Santa Paula. We have the volunteer program, which consists of Citizens Patrol and Your Neighborhood Watch. We have Police Explorer posts. We have about 10 to 15 explorers that assist and participate in various community events. And we have one animal control officer who's in charge of animal regulation enforcement throughout the city, working in conjunction with Spark. The Support Services Commander is also in charge of investigations, which include detectives, evidence management, the court liaison, gang investigations, narcotic investigations, the community service officers, and the Special Enforcement Unit, as well as Records Department. What we do here is from dispatch to patrol. During the last 4 years, from 2015 to 2019, there was a total of calls for service of 116,784. Of those calls, the priority one or emergency calls were 3,660. The priority two calls were 28,223. Those are urgent calls or crimes that has just occurred. The priority three calls, which is the normal response report calls and administrative calls, were 81,902. So the priority three calls were 72%, priority two were 25%, and priority one, the emergency, was 1 or 3%. Our crime statistics for the last couple of years, the 1 year change, year-to-date crime reported, crime has risen approximately 40%. The year-to-date crime reported is approximately 4% above the previous year. These rates are attributed to the early release of prisoners or inmates from the jails and prisons of the state, as well as the pandemic COVID-19, which had, for some reason, property crimes spiked greatly. Property crimes meaning thefts, burglaries, and auto thefts. Our training for the department and its personnel is mandated by the Peace Officer Standards and Training of California, California legislation, and our policies and procedures of the police department. Currently, the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, this was established in 1959 by legislation to create minimum selection and training standards for California law enforcement post-program. Is voluntary and incentive-based. Funding comes from the state penalty fund and no tax dollars involved. The California legislation requires all police officers to take certain courses. Santa Paula Police uses both the Peace Officer Standards and Training as well as the California legislation as the minimum standard, and it also exceeds it in many areas. The process for hiring is as follows. Prior to becoming a sworn or non-sworn Santa Paula Police personnel, all employees must go through this process to be considered for a position. The process includes pre-employment application and review, the written interview, physical test, oral panel interview, chief's oral interview, an extensive background check, polygraph examination, psychological examination, and finally a medical examination. For all new hires for entry-level police officer, this requires an academy of over 900 training hours. It is approximately 5 to 6 months, and it's a rigorous time spent in the academy learning different areas of investigations and basic patrol functions, such as investigation of sex crimes, laws of arrest, use of force and de-escalation of force, handling disputes, crowd controls, domestic violence, cultural diversity and discrimination, people with disabilities, leadership, professionalism and ethics, principal policing in the community, and gang awareness. After graduating from the academy, they then returned to the police department where they entered their first phase, which is phase 0, and that's 80 hours of in-house training. After that, they are assigned to a field training officer for a minimum of 16 weeks or over 640 hours of additional training. Post requires the minimum of 400 hours, but we exceed that by over 240 hours. The new hires, their minimum training standards is 1,620 hours. Our police budget overview consists of our general fund, COPS grant, and Measure T funding. Currently, our salaries and benefits is $6.943 million. Our professional services, $244,000. Spark is $150,000. Equipment and maintenance, $279,000. New vehicle equipment is $130,000. Trainings and meetings, $44,000. Fuel is $87,000, and supplies $102,000. And those are rounded numbers. Use of force, which is coming to light, predominantly in light of what's going on. Our use of force officers should only use that amount of force that reasonably appears necessary given the facts and totality of the circumstances known to or perceived by the officer at the time of the event to accomplish a legitimate law enforcement purpose. That's under Penal Code Section 835A. When we use of force, every use of force is thoroughly documented and reviewed by several levels from the watch commander to the chief of police. Every month, there's a use of force committee that meets and reviews every use of force that occurs within the department. These are also reviewed every year by a committee to see if any changes are needed or additional implementations of training is needed. Any violations of policy or the law are investigated by internal affairs process, and all serious violations or conflicts with personnel are referred to an outside investigation agency to ensure investigation is unbiased and the integrity of the investigation is maintained. And these are usually done by an outside investigations, or the district attorney's office investigates it if a crime is detected. That concludes our PowerPoint presentation. Would like to thank you for your time, and also the Santa Paula Police and Fire Collection, the Santa Paula Police and Canine Foundation, which supports us in their mission of the Santa Paula and Canine Foundation is to raise funds for the City of Santa Paula Police Department for needed equipment, programs, and services. And at this time, we'll turn it over to retired Commander Mark Statler. He will be talking about the CIT program.
Thank you. So I'm the program administrator for the Ventura County Law Enforcement Crisis Intervention Team. And although I'm employed by the County of Ventura and Sheriff's Department, I run the program for all law enforcement in Ventura County. We're unique here in Ventura County. We're the only county in the state of California that has every single law enforcement agency all doing the same crisis intervention training program. And CIT that we do here is based on the Memphis model out of Memphis, Tennessee, and it's considered the gold standard of law enforcement crisis intervention training. Memphis in 1988 is when CIT started. It was created, and they started for the same reason we did back in 2001, after a series of officer-involved shootings that had to deal with people who are suffering from mental illness. And the end result of that is the injury and the damage to the reputation of the law enforcement to the public. Memphis and Ventura County in 2001 realized that there has to be a better way, that we shouldn't be going to mental health calls and then our only result come to that of officers and citizens who are in need of mental health assistance getting hurt. So some of the factors unique to our community, as you know, the state mental health hospitals closed years ago, and as a result of that, if you look at charts, it's directly inverse. As the populations in the mental health facilities around the state decreased, the populations in our jails around the state increased. And a lot of people who end up in our jails are people who are suffering with mental health issues. So the agencies that are financially supporting the CIT program are Sheriff's Office, Ventura PD, Oxnard PD, Port Hueneme Police, Santa Paula Police, and Simi Valley, and Ventura County Behavioral Health are all financially contributing partners to paying for the program. Other agencies that participate, as I said, it's every agency in the county, and including we recently added the FBI here locally is participating. The colleges, the community college, and even Naval Base Ventura County participate in our training program. This is just kind of a sample picture of our collaboration, although we started at the very beginning with just a couple of agencies and behavioral health and National Alliance for Mental Illness, on mental illness. This is what our collaboration has grown to, and that's actually just a sample of the agencies. So why train officers? So over the years, you know, Ventura County Behavioral Health is a fantastic partner of ours, but the reality of it is law enforcement is out on the street 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And traditionally, law enforcement has always responded to the mental health crisis calls and been there to stabilize the call, and then we wait for the mental health professionals to come and take over. But as budgets have been cut for behavioral health, and at times the crisis team already has their handfuls with their own self-initiated activity, they haven't been available for law enforcement. So that kind of forced the necessity for law enforcement to learn more about mental health and how to deal with crisis situations so that we can handle them on our own. And so right now, 95% of the 911 calls related to mental illness are handled solely by law enforcement. So how prevalent is mental illness in our county? Studies show that 3% of the population has severe mental illness, and our county is approximately 850,000. So in Ventura County, we have about 25,385 people suffering from mental illness. And studies indicate that 1 in 3 Americans will suffer from some form of mental illness in their lifetime. So every 24 hours in Ventura County, law enforcement will contact 5 adults in a mental health crisis and 1 child. I know that number sounds low, but when I say this, I'm referring to someone that's in like a severe mental health crisis that's potentially needing hospitalization. And 3 of those 6 mentioned above will end up in psychiatric hospital involuntarily. Those are actually old numbers, and I'd say that they've increased since then. So law enforcement contacts approximately 1,800 adults and 300 children each year. And so here's the mission statement for the CIT program. Our mission is to develop partnerships with mental health consumers, their family members, and other agencies and organizations. CIT responds to individuals who are in a crisis as a result of a mental health disorder, and they shall assess and assist those individuals in the most effective and compassionate manner possible. So the goals of the program is we want to de-escalate crisis situations, reduce the necessity for use of force, reduce the use of jail, want to decrease recidivism, and facilitate the empowerment of mentally ill individuals by increasing their lawful self-reliance on health-enhancing behaviors. So the training that the Crisis Intervention Team program provides, we provide what's MIDD, which is Mental Illness Development and Disabilities. We do that for jail orientation for the new deputies going to the jail, and then we'll also do it for patrol orientation for newer officers. It's an 8-hour training class. We recently developed an 8-hour refresher course because we recognize that CIT is a perishable skill. So officers who haven't been to the 40-hour class in several years will now be able to go to the 8-hour refresher class and we're going to start doing that in the next couple of months. We just got approval from Post, Peace Officer Standards Training, and STC, which does the jail training certification. In addition to that, so we also teach at the Basic Academy. So there's 3 different sections where the CIT program contributes. Learning Domain 20 is use of force. So we teach a 4-hour block of instruction on use of force. It's a brand new curriculum that's been added to use of force. You know, in the academy, there's been, for years we've talked about de-escalation, but there's never been a formal training program on it. 2 years ago, I was part of a committee that helped develop the new curriculum, and they're testing it right now, and Ventura County's academy is one of the test academies. So the last 3 classes have received the new 4-hour block of instruction on de-escalation. LD 23 is crimes in progress. I teach a class on officer-involved shootings that's related to that. And LD 37 is a class on persons with disabilities. So that's where we train the new officers on issues related to mental illness and developmental disability and how to recognize signs and symptoms. The CIT Academy, that's our 40-hour class. That's one of the main things we do. We present that program 2 to 3 times a year. We can train up to 50 officers at a time. We currently, this week, we have a class going on right now. Tomorrow we'll graduate 50 new trained officers and deputies and dispatchers in the CIT program, 2 of those being from Santa Paula Police Department. We'll graduate tomorrow. We also do briefing trainings. 4 times a year we'll travel around the county. Right now we're doing it remotely. We're sending in training videos so that they can show them to their briefings to kind of give updates so when laws change and procedures change. And then we do community events and presentations such as tonight. So crisis intervention techniques, crisis definition. What I tell officers, if somebody asks you how do you handle a crisis, well, the acronym is you have a concerned response, you intervene safely based on the known information and statutes. And that's the simple way to answer how do you handle a crisis. Main concept we teach is time and space, because if you can slow things down, create a safe distance between you and the person in crisis, your opportunity for a peaceful resolution and everybody going home safe and getting to where they need to be is much greater. We teach the TACT model, which is tone, atmosphere, communication, and time. Make sure that all the officers understand those concepts, and it's an easy acronym to remember. We teach them to reach for small concrete goals and use win-win strategies. So this is just a sample of some of the topics we teach in the training academy: mood disorders, personality disorders, dementia, Alzheimer's, psychotic disorders, children and adolescents, developmental disabilities, substance abuse disorders, military veterans issues, traumatic brain injury, suicide, including suicide by cop. We talk about PTSD and then also medications. As I mentioned, that's just kind of a small sampling of what we do. When we finish the class on Friday, which is tomorrow, we have them go through role play exercises where they actually have live actors in the room and they have to demonstrate their skills in front of a mental health professional and a law enforcement professional that are trained in CIT. And we use the Force Options Simulator, so they get more opportunities to do role play scenarios. So what is a 5150? People will ask that a lot. So it's when someone has a mental health disorder and then they meet one of 3 criteria: they're a danger to self, danger to others, or they're gravely disabled. Or it could be a combination of those, but it has to be a mental health disorder plus one of those 3 conditions. And when we do that, officers are allowed to apply for a 72-hour hold. Just because they do the hold and take them to the ER doesn't mean that they'll stay for certain for 72 hours. Laws have changed in that the doctors and hospitals are required to release the people as soon as they no longer are showing the symptoms of their mental illness. So approximately number of applications written by law enforcement every year, and I think this number has actually gone up since I've created this presentation, but about 1,100 applications are written a year here in Ventura County for mental health holds. And that's just law enforcement. There's also ones written by, of course, the mental health professionals themselves. So what happens after a mental health disorder contact? So here's some of the results. 49% typically result in involuntary hospitalization. About 3% are booked in jail. About 28% are a contact only, meaning they contacted the person, determined that they didn't meet criteria, and then released them. 11% go to the emergency room for probably some type of a medical issue. And then about 6% go on a voluntary psych hold. We do try to get people to go voluntarily, and if they choose to do so, we typically tend to let them go voluntarily first. So we've had today, the class that we're graduating tomorrow, we have is our 53rd CIT Academy. We've done 53 since 2001. Over 1,900 have been trained. Approximately 90% of patrol, this is all the paying partners, are CIT trained, and about 72% of dispatchers. And class 53, as I mentioned, graduates tomorrow. So over 1,900 have been trained since we began the program in 2001. Not all those are in service. You know, some have retired, passed away, moved to other agencies. But so community partnerships are one of our main partners is Ventura County Behavioral Health. As I mentioned, they are a financial partner. They help pay for the CIT program. And we regularly work with their crisis team, their RISE triage grant. We have a partnership with them. RET is a rapid response expert team. It's a group that meets on a bi-weekly basis to talk about issues with dependent adults and elderly adults that are in need of wraparound services. Persons of Concern meeting, it's related to Ventura County, follows Laura's Law, where we have regular meetings of persons of concern, and again, we utilize wraparound services to try to, people who are regularly involved with law enforcement and behavioral health department that prove to be more complicated cases. That way we can kind of game plan and connect them with services. VCMC is actually in charge of Hillmont Psychiatric Center, not Ventura County Behavioral Health. So we do liaison with them to try to work out any issues that come up. We also liaison with all the emergency departments around the county to make sure things are working smoothly between law enforcement, behavioral health. And there's a children's CSU in Oxnard, so it's kind of nice to have a children's stabilization unit. It's a way to get a child some help without having hospitalization. Typically, it's only a 23-hour, 59-minute stay when you are at that facility. If they need more intensive treatment, then they would transfer them to a longer-term facility. Aurora Vista Del Mar Hospital, it's an important partner in our community because of the bed space that they have. They're in the process of expanding. Currently, I think they have about 58 beds that they'll take veterans, older adults, and children. So it's important having that right here in our county. And I think in the next year to 18 months, they plan to expand by another 100 beds. They probably would have been near completion, but the Thomas Fire caused their plans to be set back. VCVC, that's a Ventura County Veterans Coalition. We go to attend their meetings regularly, and so that we can help connect veterans with services. And then Tri-County's regional centers for dependent, disabled children that we encounter, and then we can help connect them with services. And that is my and my assistant's contact information and our email address. If anybody wants more information, feel free to call us or email us.
Okay, Commander Varner, would you like to let us know our program, CIT, how we train our officers and what it entails?
So currently, our goal, and I believe the goal of every agency within Ventura County, is to attempt to reach 100% completion for all of our officers in CIT. Currently, our numbers are at 78% of our officers are trained in CIT. There's a couple reasons why we're not at 100%. We get new officers that come out of the academy. We have new officers that come possibly from other agencies that don't offer CIT training. So as Mr. Stadler had indicated, the academies only run sometimes 2 to 3 times per year. Oftentimes, some of the seats are based off of kind of our obligation or our portion of what we give to the program. And there's oftentimes we run into other issues such as staffing levels. Oftentimes we run into problems, if there's officers on leave or various other issues that we can't send somebody. If we have staffing related problems, we may not be able to send as many people to CIT as we'd like to. But we generally trying to get at least one person per class. As stated, we already have 2 people that are going to be completing tomorrow. So the goal is to get all of our staff through the 40-hour class, and we also offer some of the continued training. We do the various trainings at our briefings. Right now, like Mr. Stadler said, they're all recorded and via Zoom, but CIT is very good about not only coming out and offering those briefing trainings, but they also provide us with essentially 24-hour service if we have questions, if our CIT trained officers are unsure how to handle something. Both Mr. Stadler and his associate are available 24 hours, and all of our officers not only have their numbers and contact, they also know that they can contact myself, who oversees our CIT program. And we have so many resources available to us, as was shown in the presentation, that part of the CIT training goes through each one of those resources for them, so all of our officers are aware and can provide those services.
Thank you, Commander. At this time, I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Yes, Jose and I will be trading off on the questions, and, excuse me. Also, I wanted just to mention CIT, if I may. I've been impressed by CIT for years and years, and I know under previous administrations, at one point, we did have the highest number of trained officers, and Scott's been a wonderful advocate for it, and I know that he'd actually been used at many public events, and he's really a very loyal person to the program, which only benefits the community. So hopefully we will get our numbers up somewhat. Now, this first question, and some of these questions, they were submitted, and Jose and I discussed the fact that, there might be some follow-up to the questions that were submitted if we think that maybe something needs to be clarified or whatever. But now, do you gentlemen have copies of the questions?
Yes.
Okay, so you have copies of the questions. Okay, thank you. And, okay, and moderator's comments. Do you want to make these? Yes. Or do you want me to do it, or? Okay.
Either way.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that I was jumping on.
Well, no, you weren't. No,
Okay.
I don't think it didn't all get communicated the way it should have.
Okay.
In preparation for the forum, we did ask that no questions related to current cases which may be investigating be asked. Any discussion could jeopardize the investigation. We also cannot engage in discussion related to complaints or specific officers. With any organization, the police department employees do have rights, and there are various laws prohibiting them from discussing personnel matters. We will strive to be as transparent as possible, but cannot jeopardize the integrity of any cases. With that said, we have received numerous questions from the public in anticipation of the forum. The questions were reviewed and consolidated to best address some general themes of the community, as well as to address what we felt were the most relevant issues facing our community today.
There we go. Thank you, Ned. Okay, the first question basically talks about what should we look for as metrics to access improvement in public safety practices going forward. And I wonder if there had been some sort of had this been tracked before? Has there been some sort of a chart, as it were, of how the department does as far as in any sort of interactions, complaints, use of force calls, things like that? I know they're not even that common, but how would you see assessing that?
First of all, regarding tracking the uses of force, complaints, and so forth, we do keep track of those of those those areas, we are mandated by law to report those uses of force and so forth every year. And in addition to that, externally, we are adhered to the peace officer standards and trainings, laws, the state law, and our own policies within the police department. In addition, we abide by the penal code, the vehicle code, the health and safety codes for such metrics. Internally, we assess the situations, assess those statistics, and specifically more so every week, the crime statistics. And we review those and assess them and focus on the problem areas, focus on the problem crimes that are happening at the time, and try to target those specific crimes. But we do assess those continuously. So we do that quite a bit or frequently.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Jose?
Thank you, Peggy. I have a second question. The phrase defund the police has many people saying this should be done. What this phrase means to you as a practical and constructive strategy for overall public safety and protection of civil rights?
Currently, our budget is down approximately $900,000 from the previous year, and currently we have 3 officer positions that we've eliminated to accomplish that minus $900,000. And no other city department has that type of reduction. So we have made some reductions. Since then, as I mentioned before, the crime has gone up approximately 40% as a result. And our training budget has, been also reduced somewhat. The agencies that first thought about the defunding and disorganizing or doing away with their police departments have seen crimes tremendously spike as a result of doing that. AB 109, Prop 47 and 57, which called for the early release of inmates from the prisons and jails, have also contributed to the spike in crimes, but yet we have not seen any increase in law enforcement personnel. So there is that correlation between defunding and not having enough personnel to combat these areas. And then during the COVID-19, since it started this pandemic, we've also seen an increase in crime spike up.
And isn't it true, too, just as a follow-up, that the defunding movement, as it were, actually started in very troubled areas where they've had a lot of issues and a lot of problems, and very often very large cities?
Yes.
So some of it could even be maybe considered regional or whatever. I mean, I understand people wanting to do what they can to eliminate crime, period. So anyway, but let me ask the next question, please. What should the community be doing to support law enforcement?
Peggy, if I'm sorry to interrupt, if I could add back on the defunding question. One of the things that was also brought up during the defund movement was reallocating of resources
Right.
To things like mental health. I think what maybe the community hasn't been educated on, and perhaps maybe that's something that we didn't do a good enough job educating, is that we are receiving vast amounts of training, and we have large amounts of resources that we're offering to the public. The CIT program here in Ventura County, I think, is probably one of the most robust that I've heard of, certainly within our area in California. And with the training, our officers are able to provide a lot of resources, are able to assist those people who are suffering from the mental health issues. And some of the other resources that the city is also involved with that we're part of is part of the backpack medicine program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that's a group of doctors and clinicians that'll go out and kind of assist the homeless out into the areas where their camps are located. We do go out and assist them with that. We do other things such as refer people to the One Stop. I'm sure you've done articles on the One Stop here every Friday. That's something that we've instructed our officers to go out and encourage some of our population to go get some of those treatments. So I think overall we've done a lot to try and boost up the services we're offering as a police department. And I can't say that's just us in Santa Paula. That's throughout Ventura County. We've looked at various youth programs. I know that part of the defund movement has brought up youth programs. We have a pretty good Explorer post. We have high school interns we bring in. We're looking at the formation potentially down the road of maybe a PAL League. So all the things that we're hearing from the defund movement, we've already been trying to implement and working towards. I just thought that was important to add so the community is aware what work is going on within the police department, not just here in Santa Paula, but throughout Ventura County.
Oh, absolutely, and at times too, though, I think people maybe perhaps don't realize that when you receive a call for somebody who is having a mental health crisis or whatever, there is a physical threat, perhaps to a member of the household or perhaps a physical threat to themselves. So under any circumstances, you would need a police officer. Do you
Absolutely.
agree?
And with our CIT training, one of the unique things that our CIT program offers is we put this little pin, and maybe I can kind of point it to the camera here. It says CIT. That helps us designate and show us who's a CIT officer, and members of the community, if they have somebody who's in a crisis, can request a CIT officer. And our dispatchers are aware, our watch commanders are aware who are CIT trained, and they'll send a CIT trained officer to that call who has that specialized training.
Very good.
In fact, I could add to that, I missed it in my presentation. Typically what I do is when I do presentations, I remind the community, if you or a loved one's having a mental health crisis, request a CIT trained officer. And the reason being is that, odds are you have a good chance of getting one because of the amount of training we have here in the county. Plus, I think it changes the mindset of the dispatcher when they receive the call, and it changes the mindset of the officer when they hear that. They're thinking more of it's a mental health issue or possibly some of the developmental disability, and not just a disturbance call at a home that could be anything.
Sure. It needs a certain amount of finesse and education to handle. Thank you.
Following up on what Commander Barnard said, how many CIT trained police officers we have in Santa Paula?
So it's nice to throw out a statistic of 78%. Currently, of the officers we have 25 currently trained. And again, our goal is to get, as the classes come along, to send all of them. It's kind of this constant struggle to try and get all of them up there. I know at one point we were in the high 80s, low 90s, as Peggy had referred to earlier. Our goal is still to continue doing that. It's just certainly with COVID, it kind of pushed back, I think, a little bit of the CIT program's goal to have more classes throughout the year. They've done a fantastic job of transitioning over to a kind of a modified Zoom type of class. And so our goal is to continue putting our officers through that.
We were forced to cancel our class that we had scheduled in March. It was right when COVID first hit, so we missed one class earlier this year. And we were post-approved for our new format. It's 4 days using Zoom, and then the final day, which is tomorrow, we bring them in person. We have masks and social distancing procedures set in place to get it done safely.
Your organization perhaps should come up with a PSA that could be put in newspapers and in different places that say if you have a family member in crisis and you're calling the police, request CIT or something like that. That would.
You're absolutely right. We do.
Yeah, you have to do that. Now, what more should the community, as I said earlier, what do you think the community should be doing to support the police department more? And of course, the obvious answer is not commit any crimes, but you know, as far as, I know that there's always been a very strong feeling that people really have to report what they see. Do you see that as a way to support the police department, as helping to keep crime down?
I think that's a great way to assist the police department by calling crime as it is occurring and not be afraid to report it. You can always remain anonymous. I think another way to get involved is through volunteering. We have the Neighborhood Watch program, and we also have the Citizens Patrol program. Those two programs were in the recruitment phase when COVID took effect, so we're kind of had to slow down on that, but we are going to proceed as soon as we can with recruitment for Citizens Patrol personnel as well as Neighborhood Watch programs. So, and then additionally, you know, as we're going down the street, you know, they can stop us and talk to us, and we can get to know the community on a one-to-one basis, personal level. They know who we are, and we know who the community is. I think that's very important in setting that relationship. In the past, what we've done is we've had coffee with the cop. I think that brings the community to, on a personal level, to talk to a police officer. Granted, you know, you drink a good cup of coffee, but, you know, I don't know about the donuts, you know. And also what we've done in the past, during this time of COVID, we get a lot of calls. That's my mom's birthday, my kid's birthday, can you participate in the parade? So we've done that many, many times. More so, a little girl here at the park was, I understand, very ill, and we participated in a parade and a day in the park with this little girl. Things like that we do, and people recognize us for doing that, I think goes a long way. As well as, at the same time, our officers need to stop and talk to people, be more accessible to the public. So I think the community getting more involved or helping us out is one, reporting crime as it's happening, volunteering through a Neighborhood Watch or Citizens Patrol, and also stop us on the street.
Engage.
Engage, yes.
Oh, thank you.
The following question is about racism. Let's talk about racism as systematic racism plays into policing. Have you taken a step into educating yourselves on that?
Yes, we have. Currently, all our officers are trained in cultural diversity and discrimination, and that's attained while in the academy, and also with follow-up trainings every year. We are mandated to attend courses for discrimination, bias, harassment, and so forth, and that's done through the city. So we're continuously receiving that education, and also, you know, every 5 years, that training comes up again for cultural diversity for officers to attend and familiarize themselves. And currently, we are in the planning stages of getting guest speakers to come to the station or during our training sessions to speak with the officers about cultural diversity. The LGBTQ folks, or any folk that wants to come and talk to us and educate us on whatever their movement is, we would be more than glad to have them. So we're in the process of doing that right now.
And if I can also add, as part of the CIT curriculum, culture and LGBTQ are presented and are part of the discussion. So the officers that are going through CIT are also getting acclimated to some diversity training as well.
Thank you.
This one's for you, Chief. It says basically that when you'd made a...
Just to confirm, you'd like to call Richard Lackner.
Sorry about that. Yeah. And here I turned it down, you know, but anyway, I apologize. Following the death of George Floyd, you had made a statement via social media that all lives matter, and later on, social media, the post was edited and all lives matter was omitted. Could you explain the reason for this change?
You know, when I first made that statement a few months back, the statement was not made, not to say that Black lives do not matter, but was instead acknowledging the fact that Santa Paula is a diverse community, and to exclude other races in my statement, it did not support our goals of equality for all members of our collective community. However, we understand that from the feedback from the community that this statement was taking affront to the Black Lives Movement, and thus we took it down as it provided counterintuitive to our purpose. Myself, since high school, I've been in the military for 8.5 years, around numerous individuals of different backgrounds, a lot of culture diversity in the military. I've been a police officer for over 36 years. Again, cultural diversity, and we've never, or I've never seen anybody other than a human being alongside either military or at work or out and about.
Well, I guess when emotions run high, it's sometimes just hard to say anything that's the right thing, and very often you're trying to say the right thing and it's wrong, so what can I say?
Right, and I could honestly say that members of our police department do not express or experience any type of bias towards anybody in the community.
Okay, thank you very much.
Talking about the Santa Paula Police Department, what changes should be top priority?
Currently, top priority right now is our staffing levels. We would like to reach that number of 34 officers. And that would be larger than our current clerical staff, and to stay on top of ever-changing laws that come down every year just about, and also the increasing workload, it would minimize on our current staffing levels. Currently, one of the top priorities was to reorganize the police department. That has been done. As I explained in the organizational chart, we've divided the bureaus into two, the patrol services and as well as the support services. So that has been done. We've made numerous adjustments to personnel staffing in different areas of the department. As well, with that came along promotions. Top priorities also the qualities of life issues, homelessness, gangs, narcotics, transients, all that. We wish to participate with other groups to address these issues. Currently, we have one officer that's been assigned to the Ventura County Narcotics Task Force to help us combat the issues of narcotics within the city. And also, we look forward to working with homeless groups so that we can, if we come in contact with a homeless or transient person, we can offer them assistance and guide them to where they need to go, or drive them there if we have to. We've done that in the past. So those are our priorities. And also another priority is to do a community survey of the needs, wants, and of the community. And once we receive those results, we can assess our services or redirect our services as to the community's priorities, if we can.
Thank you.
Next up, as everything changes, technology is just taken over everything, and it's changing every day. And of course, communication is always key. And citizens need to be in the know real time about laws, restrictions, and how they are being protected. Now, I've noticed personally that the department has really increased its numbers of alerts to the citizens when there's been things. The other day, there was a terrible accident, and they went ahead and said, well, you know, you have to avoid these streets. There's been a cougar sighted. There's, you know, so I'm very pleased that law enforcement's taking advantage of this. But what more can the SPPD do to meet these challenges and communicate with its constituents and provide the most up-to-date safety standards utilizing the opportunity MT funding provides?
You know, as I mentioned, you know, the laws are always changing, and therefore our policies have to change. And our policies are accessible on our website. In addition to this, of the most current up-to-date information, we utilize Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and currently Nixle. Nixle is sort of like a instant message that goes out as to what is going on, major accident at this location, please, you know, do not come through here. Just alerting the citizens of what is currently going on real time. And we also urge the citizens to sign up for Nixle to receive this instant messages as things are going on in the community. So that's what we're using. We're using these modern day technology to alert the community, as well as our, like I said, our policies are accessible on our website.
And if I can also add, our policies are generated, we utilize a company called Lexipol, and it's almost the industry standard in essentially going over policies, creating policies for police departments. The nice thing about Lexipol is it keeps current on state mandates, state laws, Senate bills, case law. So whenever there's an update or a case that may have gone through the, you know, an appellate court or wherever, the current case law is going to come through. It may change our policy. As soon as that policy is changed, it is sent to our officers. They're able to acknowledge the change, understand the change. Our watch commanders will go over it, and so everybody's on board with what the current law is. And then we'll update it on the website, so the public is always going to have access to what our policies are. And that's a state mandate. We have to have those available to the public, and we do on our current website.
Thank
And
you.
also regarding our Lexipol policies, like Commander Varner said, it's given to every officer. Every officer has to read it, familiarize themselves with it, and sign off that they read and understood that policy. When we first switched over to Lexipol policy a few years back, there's over, I believe now, about 1,000 policies in place. So every officer had to go through each and every one of those policies and sign off on every single policy. So that's our policy procedure.
Thank you.
Next question. What is Annapolis PD's policy on California Law SB 1421 requiring the release of certain police officers' information relating to specified incidents, complaints, and investigations involving peace and custodial officers to be made available to public inspections pursuant to the California Public Records Act?
You know, a couple of years ago when this first came into effect, we were inundated with requests of this type. Since my retirement last year, Commander Varner has been tasked with doing this type of work, so I'll let him explain that.
Okay, so SB 1421 essentially opened up a police officer's personnel record, but there's certain criteria in order for somebody to put a public records request in for a personnel record. Essentially what it, the way it's outlined is we have to give out information for officers who have discharged a firearm, officers who have any use of force resulting in great bodily injury and or death, and any sustained findings of sexual assault or sustained finding of dishonesty. And when I say sustained finding, that means we have conducted an internal investigation, we have deemed that that act did occur, And at that point, because we have sustained that that did in fact occur, it's subject to release of the Public Records Act under SB 1421. We do not disclose information that does not meet those criteria. If it is a investigation where an allegation was made against somebody, we conducted an investigation, we have a non-sustained finding, that is not subject to release. So anybody who, and we get them regularly, people can submit a Public Records Act request, and if there is any of those criteria, by law, we have to release that information. So that's essentially what Senate Bill 1421 says, and per our policy and its law, we have to abide by it.
Is there a
To add
time-
to that, excuse
Go
me.
ahead.
To add to that, it's very time-consuming researching and gathering all documents and data that it's required of this bill. There's some agencies that have full-time staff specifically dealing with this. We don't have that luxury. In addition, we also work closely with our city attorney's office on the legal side of it for this Records Request Act as they come in, each individual one. There's some areas that we take legal advice from the attorneys regarding as to redacting or what can and cannot be released.
And we also work very closely with our city clerk.
Yeah.
She does a fantastic job of monitoring all Public Records Act requests that come in and make sure we have what we need done within the allotted amount of time we have to do that.
I was going to follow up on that. What is the expected time, returning time, to get that information from the police department?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact amount of days. I believe, is it 10? I was going to say 10 or 14, but I didn't want to go with the wrong one. So we have 10 days to respond. We can ask for an extension, but there's a process we go through for that, and we'll send some legal forms requesting extensions if we can't fulfill the request in that amount of time.
Thank you.
And some of these requests come from back east, from all over the place. So I don't know the purpose that they're gathering this information, but we have to abide by their request.
On a different subject, could you describe the relationship between the police department and ICE, the Immigrations and Custom Enforcement, including formal and informal agreements possibly, and memorandums of understanding? And could you describe if and how Santa Paula Police are notified of ICE operations within the city?
Currently, we have no formal or informal MOU with any of these agencies, federal agencies. If they come into town, we do not participate in their investigations. They do notify us that they are within the city, and they advise us when they get here and when they leave. And that is about the extent of participation that we have with them. Under SB 54, we are currently in alignment with that, that we do not participate in any of their investigations, as well as with the California Governor's Code, which directs or states about the cooperation with immigration authorities, which states that they are required to notify us when they're in the city. And that's about our extent of participation with them.
I'm curious though, do you have any idea or offhand, how often are you even notified? Are they in the city often, or just occasionally, or just a few times a year?
I would say they're in the city occasionally. I read the logs every morning that I come in, and I do every once in a while read that they're in town. They do alert us, and also we have a policy that addresses this as well. Our Lexipol policy that addresses working with these federal agencies, which pretty much sets the guidelines, which pretty much we do not participate in their investigations.
And for anyone out watching right now that wants to know what policy that is, specifically that's policy 415 of our our policy manual, and it will outline everything we can and cannot do pursuant to Senate Bill 54.
Okay, thank you.
Following question is, what is the Santa Paula PD view of victims of crime? Does the city and our police department support victims of crime? If so, please provide what the city and Santa Paula Police Department do for the victims of crime.
You know, victims of crime to me or to any police officer are very, very important. And we do have sincere feelings for each and every one. The way we support them is that if they're the victims of crimes, we give them information as to the resources that are available to them. We give them what they call a Marcy's card, which in it states all the available resources, available programs that are available to these victims of crimes. Also, the District Attorney's Office has an advocate, victims crime advocate, which works closely with these victims while in the process of the court proceedings. And they offer them such as services on restraining order, assisting them getting restraining orders and any other legal papers that they may need. There's also the Family Justice Center, which also provides legal paperwork and assistance to each and every victim of crimes. In our storefront at the Los Piedras Park, we also have a person that can assist victims of crimes and directs them to different agencies and programs for the victims. The state of California also has a victims of crime program, which we also direct these victims of crimes. So we take them very seriously, and we do try to assist as much as we can.
Thank you.
What more do you believe that the city can be doing to help prevent crime? I mean, we already discussed people being more involved, but like maybe through diversion programs, counseling and intervention, neighborhood watch, et cetera. I know we'd already addressed neighborhood watch, but what programs do you think might be effective? Preventing crime. Yes.
Again, I think if the community would get more involved with calling in crimes as they're occurring, working with us, helping us out, any witnesses of any incidents, to cooperate with us. A lot of times we show up on a crime scene, and even though people saw what happened, they're reluctant to cooperate for the fear of retaliation. And so that's the number one problem. Currently, we work with the county referring youths, at-risk youths, for various programs to encourage, and we also encourage neighborhood participation in neighborhood watch programs to report the crimes as they are happening. So that's something that if the community would get more involved in reporting the crime, I think we would have a better success at our crime statistics and helping the community.
Now, as far as through, does the department recommend any diversion programs or counseling, intervention? Is there a way to deal with people before they've actually committed a serious crime, a youth, let's say, or a teenager, to try to steer them on a different path, or even better yet, get to them earlier to the extent that they, I've always thought that, a police dog is totally, the canine's irresistible, and I think more children that could be exposed to canines and their handlers, and which I know that the department has done pre-COVID, that just gives them a better outlook and creates some trust. So I just wondered if there were any diversion programs, or this, at least the questioner did, who sent this in, or counseling and intervention.
We do have referral programs. Is that there's a city impact, it's called. We referred at-risk youth to that program. They have to meet the requirements, but that's a highly effective program. We also have 2 school resource officers currently assigned to Isbell.
Okay.
One to Isbell School, one to the high school. They also refer kids who are starting to go the wrong path, they refer them to counseling or wherever the assistance that they may need. You mentioned the canines. We utilize those canines for meeting with kids and having little school functions with a dog, so they can pet the dog and get to know the dog. We also have what they call a bicycle rodeo program, where we teach kids about the safeties of riding a bicycle and so forth. And that's also very productive, such as, the intervention and working with the youth. The Neighborhood Watch program is also very effective. We have about 20 programs or 20 neighborhoods that are involved. I would like to take that even further and be more active with it to train and educate those groups, because there's more to just watching your neighborhood. There's Neighborhood Watch consists of prevention of any crime, really, not just your neighborhood. I also want to implement in the process, like I said earlier, of expanding the Citizens Patrol program. With that, we are also talking about having a Citizens Academy for any citizen that would like to attend and learn about law enforcement and how we do things and why we do things. That would be very beneficial to the crime prevention, I think.
And also, if I can add to that, a couple things that we currently have within the city is the youth facility over at LP Park. That is also where our police storefront is, but we're huge advocates of that teen center. On top of that, Chief Cordero is actually looking at bringing back the Cops and Jocks program, which was, we haven't had for many years here.
Which was started here, actually.
Right, it did. Well, we're bringing it back. That's the direction Chief Cordero is looking at. Some other things for community involvement that if they really want to be interested in kind of learning what the police department does is ask to come on a ride-along. As long as you're in good legal standing and there's nothing wrong with you, we'd be more than happy to take you along. And so you can see what it's like to be a police officer, talk to the officers, get to know the officer. Right now, it might be a little challenging with COVID, obviously with people right there in the car, but hopefully once we get through this and we learn some we get through this pandemic, that's a great opportunity for people to really get a hands-on, direct look at what police officers go through, what they see, and what their jobs really entails.
Thank you. I know the Citizens Academies, it was fabulous, and it was stopped. I mean, it was so popular that people wanted to take it again and again. And when I was reporting on it once, I was there, and I was shooting, and I was way far off. I don't know where that went. And the officer who was helping me I said, did I hit him? He said, no, but you really scared him.
Well, we're definitely looking at bringing it back.
Yeah, I hope so. People really got a lot of insight into the police department. Okay,
Peggy,
thank you.
along those lines too, with the Cops and Jocks program, in the years past, we did not have the staffing levels to do that kind of detail.
Absolutely.
Now we do, and one of our resource officers, Joseph Morales, known as Mo, he's a Santa Paula High School graduate football player. So who better than him to go up there and be the Cops and Jocks representative? Along with counseling and intervention, we also have 4 officers from Santa Paula that grew up in Santa Paula, went to Santa Paula schools, and now are police officers with us. They grew up in the Explorer program, 2 or 3 of them. So now they're police officers with us, and we have a Hispanic female officer who also, I see these 4 officers as role models for the young kids out here in Santa Paula. If they grew up in Santa Paula and became police officers, then if those other kids want to do the same thing, they can also achieve that goal.
Thank you.
The following question is, what can be done to make the men and women who wear a badge and drive a black and white be more approachable and engaged in the community?
Our members are appreciative of the community and having community contact. But sometimes the reality is that depending on the situation or the location, sometimes it's best not to approach an officer if something is going on or he's in the middle of or busy doing something. But after that, if the officer's free and so forth, I mean, we welcome that contact with the public. I encourage that contact with the public, again, to get to know the public on a one-on-one basis, a personal basis, and get to know the needs of the community, hear from a different perspective. Everybody has a different opinion, so by talking to different people, we can get an idea of what it is that, they're, from their eyes, what they're looking at is what we should be doing and focusing on.
And I think we have an advantage. This is such a small, close-knit community, and I think the direction of Chief Cordero has always been, who doesn't know Chief Cordero here in town, right? He brings that to the police department. He expects that of the officers. So we very much want to be close with the community. We want to build those partnerships. We want to talk to you.
What I tell the young officers, they ask me, how did you manage to live here all your career? I says, well, two things that helped me throughout my career, and this is what I'm going to tell you guys to take my advice, is treat people with dignity and respect, and it'll take you a long ways.
Thank you.
Last question. What happens to an officer who violates policies or worse, violates the law?
Depending on the type of a complaint received regarding that officer, there's different types of investigations that we conduct. Right now, Commander Varner has been very active in doing these investigations, so I'll let him discuss that.
So there's various ways we can look at dealing with violations of policy. We have to look at the violation and really determine how egregious the violation was. Was this a violation that was due to a lack of training? And if so, we need to look at retraining that officer, which is kind of the first step. Really, one of the goals of any type of discipline is to change the behavior. So we have to look at what caused that behavior. When we look at this, like I said, we have the option of maybe retraining. If it's something a little more egregious, we can look at different ways of maybe providing a counseling memo if they violated policy, kind of a talk with that officer as to what they did wrong, what we expect of them, and hope that they don't do it again. We can go to a further extreme, and we can look at a written reprimand for policy violations. Things that are a little more than that we would consider a major policy violation, we would open up an internal investigation on. Our investigations can be done either in-house. We do have our support services section, and as part of that, our administrative sergeant, who I happen to oversee at this time, can conduct an investigation. He has been trained in internal affairs investigations, as have I, and if it's something that might need a little bit more administrative emphasis, then I would conduct that investigation. There are certain types of investigations we don't want to conduct in-house. We will refer some investigations to an outside investigators. That maintains some neutrality. We don't have any personal biases within the police department. We get an outside view. Depending on the outcome of that investigation, should an officer have a sustained allegation against them, we have to determine what the appropriate punishment could be. That could consist of a written reprimand. That could consist of a suspension, at which time, they're on leave, or could be up to termination. So we have to make a determination based off the investigation and the severity. Now, as far as when we look into a possible criminal allegation against an officer, generally with a criminal allegation, there will also be paralleled internal investigation that will also be conducted by us, and generally with a criminal investigation that will be conducted by an outside investigator for our internal purposes. The actual criminal case will generally refer over to either the district attorney's office and have their office take a look at conducting the investigation, or the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. If an officer is found to have violated the law, they're going to be held accountable. We pride ourselves on being a professional police department, and we're going to hold our officers to the highest level. Our officers are expected to follow the law, and if they're not, then that's when we will get involved and we'll look into it. So I hope that answers the question.
Just one little follow-up. Now, when you talk about if somebody is punished because they have been found stepping over the line somehow, but it doesn't rise to them being terminated, when you talk about them being suspended, that's suspended without pay, or is that usually?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you so
Peggy,
much.
I get a lot of phone calls regarding, officers and so forth, but a lot of these complaints are people that just want to vent their frustration regarding whatever happened. Once we do determine that this complaint is valid, we do an inquiry into what actually happened, and then we take it from there. How we're going to proceed. Is it an in-house or somebody, an unbiased, neutral party do this investigation? So we look at all those factors involved, and then we make that determination.
And if I could also add, every time a complaint is turned into the police department, every single one of those is, we conduct an inquiry on every single one of those. We've heard different people think, we throw them away or they're not accepted. Every single one of those is reviewed. Generally, they'll go to the chief of police, and because of my current assignment, they'll generally come to me, and they'll be looked into. So to kind of squash any myth or misconception, we do review every single one of those, and we take every single one of those seriously.
And to add to that, every January, we have to report every complaint received by the police station. We have to report that to DOJ regarding whether founded, unfounded, or we have to explain the status or the final outcome of that complaint. We have files with citizens' complaints, unfounded, did not meet the criteria for further investigation. So we have different files for that, but the majority of them that we have to report are the ones that we investigate. We receive. That complaint is filed and kept on file.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're pretty close to the end of our allotted time, but before we sign off, Chief, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make?
I would just like to thank all of you for putting this together. I hope that we convey to the community what we do with the police department, how we operate, our staffing levels, our hiring practices, our complaint process, everything, the questions that were asked. I hope we convey the right answer to them. If not, please feel free to call me for further discussion if they wish. And if I can discuss it, I will. But I hope we convey the message.
Thank you, Chief. And our city manager, Mr. Singer, in his usually loquacious mood tonight, did you have some remarks?
Had the opportunity to be quite observant and quiet. I do, though, because I think one thing that didn't really materialize tonight was the importance of Measure T, a sales tax measure that our citizens, in fact, passed back in 2017 that has now given us some incredible tools to bolster efforts to make this a safer community. And you heard throughout tonight's presentation the impacts of Measure T, but it wasn't explicit. And I would just share that when I got here just over a year ago, the fact is we were still a department that wasn't able to fully recognize the benefits of the Measure G funds, and it's only now starting to kind of show itself in its results. We have 7 more officers today than when I got here 14 months ago. It takes a while to get them through the academy, get them trained, get them ready to be out on the street. But throughout the evening tonight, you heard about the things that we want to do, the things that we've been doing, and in large part, that's because of the support that this community's given. So I think the vision moving forward is going to be an attractive one as we continue to look to support public safety, emergency preparedness, and just all of the services that this community deserves, and in fact is helping fund through that sales tax measure and making that a priority. So I want to acknowledge the community for that, and just recognize that it's taken some time to get to this point, but I think the outlook is still quite good for Santa Paula as a result of those additional measures and the cooperation that we have with the CIT program and the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Department and all of that.
Thank you. And to our panel, Mr. Stadler, thank you for joining us tonight. Commander, thank you for being here, and most of all, Chief, thank you for being here. And on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank all of you for watching tonight. If you're watching tonight and you've stuck through to the bitter end here, then you care about building a better Santa Paula, as I believe everybody in this room does as well. And I'd also like to thank the Santa Paula Police and Canine Foundation for their support for this evening tonight, and our 2 moderators, Jose Luis Melgar and Peggy Kelly, who did an outstanding job. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to be able to put on other presentations like this. And on Monday night, by the way, just a final note, the League of Women Voters will be sponsoring a candidates forum for our city council candidates, which will be presented starting at what time, John? I'm sorry? At 6 o'clock on Monday night. So tune in for that one as well. And thank you all again for joining us.